When the foundations are shaken, what will the righteous do? Is it possible that even Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh knows what the real election results are from last night's voting? Hello and welcome to Foundations for Life with Mike Clayton, myself, Barry Phillips. We're glad to have you along on this post-election coverage. we intend to reveal more inside information than the news broadcasters are aware of. We have our own secret sources called the Word of Elohim. Good morning, Mike. How are you? And how late did you stay up last night?
According to my bloodshot eyes, about midnight, I think it was. And it was a long night. And of course, we're probably in for some long days. The verse that you started with, Barry, is one that I've taught for many years. And in fact, I did a message on it in the month of October. And let me try that again. My mouth hasn't woke up yet totally. Psalm 11, verse 3. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? And the answer to that question really sets the stage for much of our lives. For if we consider, the foundations are destroyed, can the foundations of the Almighty be destroyed? My answer to that is no. So what foundations are they that are being destroyed? It's man's foundations. We can actually be fighting against him if we're trying to rebuild foundations that he is destroying. Next verse, in verse 4 says, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is in his holy temple. His throne is in the heavens. What is this saying to us? Very simply, I think that no matter what no matter what candidates are what's going on, he is in his temple. His foundations cannot be shaken. As the book of Hebrews says, we serve an unshakable kingdom. And so, do I have my preferences regarding what is happening? Sure. Would I have rather seen, a different governor in North Carolina than what it looks like we're getting? Absolutely. But and then of course we have what's going on in Virginia. You guys pray for Barry. He's in deep depression, but over this thing. But in the end, what kingdom do we serve? And are we, as I've said a couple times, are we studying the prophets or the puppets? Where's our focus going to be in the end?
Well, here in Virginia, the vast majority of the geographical state is a very conservative, rule-minded people. We have little pockets of very, very densely populated area, especially the suburbs of Washington, D.C. No one has any imaginations of Washington, D.C. being anything but a very, very, very liberal town. Well, the spillage of that is in Virginia, Northern Virginia. 2 or 3 counties there where the swamp dwellers live. When we talk about the swamp, the well-entrenched bureaucrats, that's where they live. And I've been there, not really by choice, but I've had to go through there, and I can tell you, no one in their right mind wants to live in that area. Mm-hmm. The 5 o'clock traffic is worse than any city, and I've been in Atlanta at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's worse.
In restaurant, in fact.
Yeah, it's worse. So continuing in Psalms 11, after it declares that Yah is in his set-apart temple and he's on the throne in the heavens, it continues. He tries, this is verse 5, he tries the righteous
Mhm.
but his being shall hate the wrong and the one who loves violence. Upon the wrong he rains snares, fire, and sulfur, and a scorching wind, or their portion of their cup. For Yahweh is righteous. He has loved righteousness. The upright shall see his face.
Yes.
In prayer last night, I tried to go to bed and couldn't, and got back. I just went in the living room and sat and prayed until I felt that I had covered it. It took a while. I kept praying about, Father, see the homes that are lit up in prayer tonight.
Mm.
When you look upon this nation, see the light that is coming out of the homes where people are seeking you. Surely there are Tzaddikim, righteous ones across this nation that provide coverage for their communities. And grant that we would have opportunity to continue to do the work that you have called us to do. Now, is that going to be in a time of darkness and upheaval, or is that going to be in a time of an open door and people having a reasonable mind? As it is at the moment here in America, for those that are watching outside this country, it would seem that people have lost their minds in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about the folks on the TV. We're talking about the folks that you see in the local markets, out in public arenas, in various situations. Behind their mask, just looking at their eyes, you can see that they're full of fear.
Yeah.
They look at you like, are you going to make me sick? Are you going to try to kill me with whatever disease you're carrying? They don't want to talk to you in public. No, you don't. It's rare that you see any conversation going on.
Yeah, it is.
Unless it's a group, people that came in the store together. Normally, you don't see other folks stopping and say, "Hey, how you doing? Hadn't seen you for a while." Well, I still can't see anything but your eyes, but people don't talk unless they need to.
Mm-hmm.
We've been separated. We've been isolated. I give people not 6 feet. I try to stand 7 or 8 feet away, not because I'm afraid of anything. I don't want to step into somebody's comfort zone. I give them all the space they need, and I make sure that when I'm addressed that I smile. Now, oftentimes they can see my smile. I don't always wear the mask. If I can get by without it, I do. That's me, and I'm not pushing on anyone else. But what I'm saying, Mike, is to try to offer the kingdom to somebody in this situation is a hard thing to do, because their fear has plugged up their ears, their walls have come up, they're in a defense mode, and they don't trust, they don't listen, they don't look, they don't want to. It's like, stay away from me, stay away, and they got their fearful hands up. So last night I was praying, Father, we need an opportunity. And I shared this with you earlier. When Israel, as all the tribes came out of Mitzrayim, they came out of a situation where it was complete and utter destruction, and they didn't really have anything to stay for. When Yehuda came out of Babylon, Babylon was not in destruction. It was a secure city. At that time, they were still in a wholesome, or I won't say wholesome, but a well-balanced society. It would have been reasonable in every imagination for them to stay right where they were. But when the decree came forth that they could go home and rebuild Jerusalem, those who had a heart for the kingdom, those who had a heart for Jerusalem went home. And uncertainty and obstruction and oppression and opposition through Sanballat and Tobiah were there to greet them. But they persevered. I've been preaching for a while now that America is going to suffer dark days and come falling apart, so that we'll be willing to leave. Last night in prayer, as I was praying, Father, show me how to pray. What came to me was that scenario I just described. And so I began to say, Father, if it's possible, bring America back to a day of light and freedom and liberty, but then open the door so we can go home. And those who have a heart to go home will get up and go home rather than people being pushed out because there's nothing to stay for. Do you want people who go reluctantly and out of a last resort? Or do you want to see people go home because they have a heart to do so and a passion to do so? If those who go reluctantly and because they have no other alternative get in the land and they face opposition, they're not going to be any help to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It will be those who have a passion and a call to be there that will rise up and stand with Yehuda for any opposition. What do you think?
Okay. I found myself thinking about this the other day a little bit as the same kind of a line that let's say that that there is a time in the near future that Israel is open, or the kingdom, however you want to figure this out. Okay, which is going to be more pleasing to the Father? A group of people that say, well, I just don't have anything here to stay for, so I guess I'll go. Or a group of people that say, I have everything here to stay for, but I guess I'll go. As I read the Gospels, it doesn't appear that Yeshua was forcing anyone to follow him. Will that kind of a scenario be laid out before us today? I don't know. But we know that the end result is the kingdom.
Yes.
But Barry, I want to talk about just and maybe we can tie this into your thoughts, or I don't know. We are in the Torah portion of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Torah portion that the elections are being held in. I just found, as I was teaching on this yesterday, I found it interesting that the announcement of the birth of Yitzhak, who would become Yitzhak, the announcement of his birth was then followed by the destruction of the cities of the plain. Could those two events be tied together? That in order for Isaac to not be corrupted, those cities had to be destroyed. I don't know. Maybe that's so maybe there's some weaving together then that could be today. But
Mike,
I think that for
go ahead. I'm sorry.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go. You
go. Finish your thought.
No, I've got somewhere to go with that. So I want you to go ahead and figure out, and let's see where you were heading there.
Well, my sister Leanne texted me the same thing about Sodom and Gomorrah. And I see that in the middle of this Torah portion, chapters 19 and the aftermath of 19 is spilled over into chapter 20, mm-hmm. where Abraham sets out and moves. Now, why was he moving? He was living in a place of revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Yah had visited him there twice recently. Why would he move from a revelation portal, if you will? Well, it could be that the reputation of Lot living in a cave with his two daughters that are bearing him children was stinking up the joint. Or it could be that nobody wanted to go in that area because of the destruction, so he moved to find a place for passersby to speak to. Or it could be that Yah says, it's time for you to pack up and move. But in chapter 20, he finds himself in a contentious situation with Abimelech, where the bride's integrity is challenged. Mm-hmm. But in chapter 21 and 22, the focus shifts to where this thing started in chapter 18, the birth of Yitzhak. Yitzhak is a type of the Mashiach, a child of promise. one in whom is entrusted the covenant. So, yes, Sodom and Gomorrah is in the middle of that, but that's not all that this Torah portion is about. It's primarily about Yitzhak, his birth,
Mhm.
the circumcision of him, the separation of Ishmael from him, and then the offering of him, it would seem some 30 plus years later at the Akedah. So to me, the revelation of the Messiah is what this Torah portion is about. That this election is in the middle of a Torah portion about the coming and the appearance and the revelation of the Messiah. However, while Messiah is revealed, the world that is unrighteous is judged. That's the counterbalance where you were going.
Mhm. Because we see that when the angels go to Sodom and they go to the house of Lot, that they tell him to flee to the hills. Now, why flee to the hills? Well, the hills are where Abraham is. So what were the angels telling him? You need to return to Abraham. Okay? And he said, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to be out here." Why is it that he wanted to be out in the midst of, well, there's a city over here that I can stay in? Is it because he thought, well, maybe Sodom and Gomorrah will not be totally destroyed, and after this is all done, I can go back there? So the choice was made there of where he wanted to go back to. And I think that many people today we're in a place of decision, Barry. To I don't want to get totally political, but I think that for this week, I don't like to go there a lot, but for this week, there's some things that have happened in front of us that need to be brought forth. We watched the election between Lindsey Graham and Cunningham, or no, Tillis. Yeah, it was Tillis and Cunningham, I guess it was. Here's a clear cut for you that here's two people that are running. One of them has an open affair with a married woman who's the wife of a veteran, and came very close to still winning the election. Why? Because the people that were voting for him don't care that he had an affair with a married veteran or somebody who was married to a vet. They don't care. In fact, there was probably many of them that were applauding that. This country of the United States is not united. Go ahead and take that word out of this. Instead of US, it should be DS, divided states. And this election was unlike, elections of the past where you had, some minor discrepancies and minor things. I guess this is how could somebody have ever been undecided in this time? It is so clear cut. And these razor thin election numbers that are coming in show a division of righteousness and total debauchery. There's no in between now here. So I don't know. Maybe that doesn't mean anything regarding where we're at. I don't know. So dig me out of it.
The verse that you quoted, Bereshit 19. He's told to escape to the hills, to the mountains, lest you be consumed. Verse 18, Lot said to them, "Oh no, Yahweh." 19, "Look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you've increased your loving commitment, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I'm unable to escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and I die." The city is burning behind him. He can feel the heat off of the place.
Yeah.
It's so fearsome, the wrath of Elohim, that he's told, don't even look back at it. And he's afraid of some unknown something that might potentially happen to him in a mountain. And if it's, as you say, that he was being told to go to Abraham, a Sadiq, for protection, he's trusting in circumstances, not in righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's where America is at right now. We're trusting in circumstances, not in righteousness. Your house being a house of righteousness is your greatest protection.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't say you shouldn't own at least a slingshot or something. But righteousness is what will guard you, yours, and that which is entrusted to you.
Isn't it amazing that you bring up a load again, that when he's told to return to righteousness, what he sees is possible calamity. The thinking, when you live in Sodom, when that is your standard, and to be called a righteous person living in Sodom is, I mean, you've kind of set the bar a little bit low here.
Yeah.
And it causes you to just not think right. There are people that call themselves Christian that are voting for people, are openly declaring that they will vote for abortion. How do you put that together? How does a person put that together in their mind, except for the fact, whatever you want to call it, that maybe it is the verse that says that Elohim has given them over. So if you're reading the word, but the word is not becoming a part of you, it's in the end useless. I mean, did Lot have a Bible on his end table, on his nightstand? Okay, I know that that it was not put together back then, and I got that. Okay, but were there maybe some writings from Noah of passing things down, and he had a copy of that on his nightstand and was reading it, but yet it didn't affect him. It didn't affect his life. How many people have you come in contact with that say that they read the scripture, but it's evident that the scripture never affects the way they live?
Well, it was affecting Lot to some degree. It says in chapter 19 that when the messengers came, that he baked for them unleavened bread.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in chapter 18, when Sarah is told to prepare 3 measures of meal for the guests, she makes ugot, which is the same word used in chapter 12 of Shemot or Exodus as defining the unleavened bread. At Pesach, was Lot keeping Pesach to some degree, at some observance? They would not have been keeping Pesach as a meal of remembrance, but a meal of prophetic understanding of what's coming. The same way that we celebrate Sukkot. It's not remembering something, it's an expectation of something. That's why we keep it. So the Democratic platform, and again, I'm going to wax a little bit political here, and I apologize for that, but the national platform for the Democratic Party in this election was not only in support of abortion, but late-term abortion up to the moment of birth, that it would be legal to dismember a baby ready to be birthed and call that abortion legal. That's what they believe is possible and reasonable, logical, permissible. Not only that, then we have the whole alphabet thing with homosexuality and the attached perversions that go along with that. And yes, I said perversions. Not only is that to be accepted, but it's to be promoted.
It's not just to be accepted and promoted, Barry, it's to be applauded.
Agreed. In addition to that, the defunding of our local law enforcements, the breaking down of our military, the introduction of Islam and its teachings in our public education system, the gender confusion ideology introduced to preschool students,
Yeah.
kindergarten and first grade. Mike, that's their agenda. It's an evil, satanic agenda. Now, that's not to say that every Democratic candidate is evil and satanic. There are some people that's the party that they grew up with, and that's what they know to do. Maybe they still believe that party is the party of JFK or some other more moderate Democratic mind. And it's not to say that the Republicans are a bunch of angels.
Oh, no, not at all.
There are evil people with D's and R's after their names.
Yeah.
Make no mistake about it. There are political power players on both sides. I get that. But the national platform for the Republican Party has been pro-life, the absolute protection of the unborn. Law enforcement, military being supported, lower your taxes, put money back in the pockets of the individual, and so on. National independence for what's the word I want to use? For our economy based on our oil production and so forth. Is it a perfect platform? No. Is it a righteous platform? It has righteous ideas about it, but no one is under the illusion that we are electing righteousness. But what does
I would have to disagree with that.
you think they are?
I think that there are people that believe that to elect the Republican Party is righteousness because their minds have been so polluted by a life of Sodom and Gomorrah. When you're spending your waking moments watching The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and this sitcom and that sitcom and the other sitcom and The Simpsons, and we could go on, but yet you think that you're living in righteousness. Excuse me, you're kind of like Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. Of your standard of righteousness is a little low, at least in my book. Okay, call that judgmental, but I just cannot see in the kingdom, going to the temple and having The Simpsons playing on TV. Just say it.
Okay, let's look at it from this angle. In 2016, Donald Trump came out of the election as the victor, much to the chagrin of the left. Those that were church folk, Hebrew roots folk, predominantly rejoiced. There were exceptions to that, but they rejoiced. We sat back. We took life as normal, not realizing that we have been given a window of time to do what it is that we were called to do and to seize our opportunity. And as you said, we sit back entertained by that which perhaps we shouldn't have been entertained by. And I'm not pointing fingers without pointing back at myself. We didn't take it seriously. Now it's contested. Now we may not get that opportunity again because there's promised lockdowns and, confiscations and limited travel, and a whole socialist agenda is sitting right over top of our heads, to where you and I may not have the freedom and the liberty to say what we want on the air without penalty. So, Mike, we're up against it. It hadn't been decided. Now is not the time to sit back and say, well, what will be, will be.
Yeah.
If you want another season of opportunity, and you vow that you will take advantage of it and not let it go to waste, Yah may open that door again for us. But it could be that this thing is in the balances until Yah's people's prayers tip the balances. It's time for the effectual, fervent prayer of righteous ones to avail much, to tip the balances in the favor of the kingdom and its opportunity.
Barry, and I don't mean to be the disaster person here, but I guess I do. In this Torah portion, okay, now I found it interesting that as today is the anniversary of the day that the fountains of the deep were opened. Okay, the 17th of the second month. I don't see anything as being coincidence. So, as in the days of Noah, could this be a little bit of an insight into what we're going to be heading into? The other aspect is this: in this Torah portion, there's a righteous man called Abram. Now, this is not a junior Zedekim. This is the standard of Zedekim, righteousness in that day. There came a time that his prayers, he had to come to an end of it. No, there wasn't enough righteous, even junior righteousness in Sodom. And so there's a time that the prayer, there's a time that the judgment will happen. You can keep praying, but judgment is still going to, Abram could have been standing there still praying as the sulfur started coming from the sky. We don't know. The sulfur is going to come at some time in the future. Am I saying we should not pray? No, I didn't say that. But understand that there's coming a time that the sulfur will come.
Yes, I understand that. I don't disagree with that. So what do? We raise up as many righteous ones as we can.
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, but I want to throw this out, and maybe our viewers can take this for personal study a little later. In the book of 2 Samuel, chapter number 2, the aftermath of the death of Shaul and Jonathan, Saul and Jonathan on the battlefield. The Shaul dynasty was in peril. Shaul's son Ishbosheth, not really a quality leader, ascended to the throne and assumed rulership. But Yehuda turned to David. Yah had already decreed and declared that David would be the king, that his dynasty would start and Shaul's would stop. There was war between the two dynasties.
Mm-hmm.
Ishbosheth He reigned 2 years over a divided kingdom. When David, who is a type of the Messiah, came to the throne, all was not immediately secured in his hand. Yeshua, the son of David.
In the words of your mom, it didn't just zap.
Yeah. So when Yeshua returns, we've always imagined all of the nations of the earth will immediately bow down to him and it'll just all be resolved immediately. I heard one Messianic teacher some years ago talking about that there's going to be an ongoing system of warfare where Yeshua will conquer the nations, that there will be those that will resist him, arrogantly so. It seems to be suggested in Zechariah 14 that there will still be some, even when the kingdom is established, that will be resistant, that if they refuse to come to Jerusalem at Sukkot, then they don't get rain on their land. Why would it say that if there would not be some who would try that?
Mm-hmm.
It talks about in that chapter that Yah will raise himself up powerfully like a man of war. There's going to be warfare, and not just one battle, perhaps. This kingdom thing that we've been praying for, we need to realize that it comes in a time of division.
Yeah. And
as that nation was divided, so our nation is divided. Pray that the kingdom of David, the son of David, will prevail. So, righteousness is what exalts a nation, not a political party. It's time for us to pray.
And Joshua had to make a decision. As for me and my house, Elijah said, decide where to go. Moses, decide which side of this thing you're going to stand on. That same pattern is happening before our eyes today, I believe. Make a decision and stick to it.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, folks,
all right, Barry, take care.
Thank y'all for joining in, and send us your cards and letters. If they're ugly and you don't like what we said, send them to Mike. He knows what to do with them better than I do. We'll see you again next week. Until then, shalom.